What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for Your Overwatch. Today we're going to be discussing possibly the most turbulent character in the Overwatch meta, Zenyatta, who has a really odd disparity as you go up the ranks. Different than most other characters, where typically there's a bit of a dichotomy whether a character is good at high tiers or low tiers, one or the other. I feel like Zenyatta goes up, down, then up again, which is what I want to discuss in today's video through the lens of taking a look at the San Francisco Shock's Grandfinals winning team comp, where I thought Zen was a major feature of their success, counter-stratting the enemy's playstyle, and in this wannabe analyst's humble opinion, deserving of the MVP, but we'll get into all that. This is how I would describe how Zenyatta works in Overwatch. At lower tiers of play, players often are very standoffish, where the engagement knowledge and teamwork synergies to rush something down isn't quite there, so because of that, the game defaults in a very poke-heavy way, where the two major ways team fights occur is either from ranged pressure or from ultimates, and it just so happens that Zenyatta is insane at both of those playstyles. And as well at lower tiers, casting a Discord and a Harmony on anything is fairly reliable value, whereas other characters like Lucio or Ana have to be much more choosy about where their value goes to get anything out of it. Now, that's not to say that I think Zen is a strong ranked character, because as many of you on Twitter were surprised when I tweeted out J3's and Sam Mito's tier list, as GM players, they rank Zenyatta as the worst in the game. And the reason for that is, as you go up in the ranked system, players do get better at the engagement knowledge and basic synergies that would counter Zenyatta, but then the San Francisco Shock comes out on top of that to break the meta again to pick up on Zen's weaknesses and emphasize his strengths. You see, the beauty of what the Shock have created throughout this season and in the era of Krusty coaching the Shock is a team that has the most positional discipline in the entire league. And although, of course, the Grandfinals were on a different patch, so you might say, well, this doesn't correlate to our ranked experience now, but I think it still does, because the Shock have even pulled out the Zen pick to win earlier tournaments in the year when we did have a rushdown meta, where that playstyle was even stronger than it was. And they still went back to the Zen due to how their teamwork plays around it to create Zenyatta's strengths for the whole team. So, as I've described, his weaknesses, strengths, and playstyle is just set in stone. And to some degree, in Overwatch, when you have a Zen pick, your entire comp plays like Zen, whether you like it or not. Which is to say, the Shock's team comp, just like the Zen pick, is a glass cannon. Because team comps in Overwatch often take the personality of every individual pick and how it relates to how the rest of the team has to play. Because Zen's healing is low, but damage is high, with Harmony and Discord, it means the rest of his team is more vulnerable to poke, but has more threatening poke themselves, as well as one of the best support ults to be used as a defensive ult up against enemy ults, which means what the Shock is able to do is force enemy teams to beat them in the mid fight, because your ults simply can't wipe them in the same way. They can get too much value out of Transcendence, but to make up for that mid fight vulnerability, the Shock have a combination of great positioning for the entire team, but also stellar Zenyatta play, where if you play a threatening Zen like Violet does, always a threat to the enemy DPS to lose the duel to the Zen, he makes space for himself that the other teammates don't have to make due to how much of a sniper threat he is in his own right. So what I found interesting about all of this is that what the Shock does is essentially create the same type of slow-paced, standoffish playstyle that happens in lower ranks anyway, right? This is how it goes full circle up and down the tiers of play, where Zen looks good at lower ranks because teamwork and commitment is low, and it's hard to have the target priority required in order to counter how exploitable Zen is. But what the Shock do is create a similar effect by having stellar positioning for the whole team and having the cleanest map control of any pro team Overwatch has ever seen. Now, Zen has some weaknesses, and we'll get to those after the strengths, but I think you can find it very illuminating where the Shock decide to take fights and which maps they're strongest on due to their proclivity to play this style. And the short TLDR of it is that the entire team is positioned around the Zen safety, which is important because a lot of Overwatch players tunnel vision their positioning oriented around the objective. But I think it's so important to have a high-level understanding of the game that the objective is not the objective in Overwatch. The team fight is. The objective is the thing you cap after you win a team fight, most of the time anyway. And this is shown no clearer than when the Shock have control of the map, because when you're defending, you get to choose where the fight fight happens. You can spawn trap, you can play the point, you can give up the point if you think you have to. You don't have to defend any ground that makes you uncomfortable. And this Hollywood defense that the Shock win the Grand Finals with is a great testament to this for both point A, but even point B more so. But on point A, they pivot around the Zenyatta's positioning and protect him so well that even though Prophet gets what should be one of the highest value picks possible, taking out the enemy's main healer, because Violet was winning the sniper exchange so well, he already had Transcendence to go aggressive with. At frankly, a very key timing. Because he charged it so early, they can Discord gesture and run at him, run him over, gain that ground, and equalize the frag battle while they're immune without the threat of a big ultimate coming afterwards. Or if it does come as Marvel generates it later in the fight, well, they're already down members, so it's harder for them to capitalize on this. Now, maybe if Soul was a bit more disciplined and didn't try to play so clutch, maybe they would have had a better time in the Grand Final up against this protect the Zenyatta style, but I mean, that's not what got them there to begin with, right? So it's hard to have a new playbook when the risk-taking one is the one that got you to the dance. But they regroup, get some ults to work with, and without Transcendence, notice how far back the Shock plays. Dodging this Dragon Strike by getting the heck out of Cafe is so much value, it's hard for me to describe. It's so important for you to dodge the enemy's big ultimate win conditions, not face them head up. So many ranked players would play right on the point and let these big ultimates hit them in the face without an answer, whereas what the Shock do is peel back and get what I would describe as a support ult's worth of value just by dodging the ultimate with positioning in exchange for a bit of point progress. Now, they cap a tick, do gain some space, Violet gets this offset Transcendence timing again, and they attempt to run over the front line with it, and it almost works, if not for a perfect hook into Roadhog shot into sniper shot combo through the Transcendence healing to get this pick off on Striker. Then the Flux does come through, and they're able to win with man advantage and overwhelm them after that. But you can see how if that pick didn't happen, bursting through the Transcendence, they probably would have full held this point. But no matter, you see just how efficient the Shock system is over the course of taking multiple fights in this really clean way. And the Streets phase of Hollywood is probably the best case scenario for this playstyle of any map in the game, especially now with the new elevators that have come through, where you put Violet and Choi on the high ground, you send nobody to contest Cart, and instead you attempt to win the sniper battle on the fringes to contain the map, not play the Cart. And I feel this segment where Striker went toe-to-toe with Gesture, hitting headshots on the Roadhog, got a lot of fanfare, but it was easy to miss that with the high ground advantage, Violet is able to crossfire this position and shoot Gesture in the back with a Discord up all the time. This Discord difference was so important for the Shock to be able to beat the Dynasty because it's low-key a soft counter to Nano Boost, especially Nano Boost on tanks. Maybe a little bit less so on faster targets that are harder to hit, but so much of Seoul Dynasty's success throughout the Grand Finals was getting Gesture in obnoxious positions and nano boosting him to bail him out. But when he needs to go in to take space and he hasn't closed the distance, well, that extra 50% of damage resistance gets cut down by the Discord orb being applied to the point where the nano doesn't really feel like that big of a benefit on the Roadhog. And I think this really teaches us a vital lesson about Overwatch, that a character like Zen, his base power is so big that if you do not answer it by exploiting his immobility, you simply are going to lose out in value on either phase of the fight. In a mid fight or an ult fight, either way, an uncontested Zen has possibly the most value of any character being uncontested in the game. And this is where, for your reference, we'll start to break down how Seoul did go about countering the Zenyatta on the two maps that they won, which I think alone, this reason is why Violet deserved MVP, that his Zen was make or break for the Shock to take the victory, as it is their strongest look. The Shock have a decent defense here, which they emulate some of their Zenyatta strengths, but on the attack, they have to put Violet on the Batiste. Reason being, if he does go to the Zen and tries to play any position that puts him relevant in the fight, the Pharah Mercy combination will be able to punish based on the angles that they have using this high ground. So instead, they game plan to try to keep Violet on DPS, so to speak, and play the Baptiste in a very offensive way to contest the Pharah, but at the end of the day, Baptiste is just a weaker character for fragging out in this way. The Bat pick lets him jump up to the high ground and be more mobile, but as this brawl commences, you can see the difference in having the damage amplification matrix instead of the Transcendence. In the other maps where the Shock won, the Transcendence was like a guaranteed team fight win button just about, whereas Amp Matrix, you can just dodge it by sidestepping it. They eventually get A, but the comp problem rears its ugly head again on B, where without that Discord orb, the enemy tanks can kind of just walk wherever they want because the enemy Ana's healing can bail them out. Marvel and Gesture attack Ons in the backline. Shock get a tick, pop a bunch of ults, but in this matchup now, Gesture with the Mercy Ana pocket does have enough healing, and it's basically like mathematically impossible to frag back once they set that up, right? That Discord orb contesting the damage resistance is so important. And sure, you can deal all the damage in the world, but if the Ana is able to heal it and continuously get nano boost and you don't have a great answer for it, this Soul Dynasty carry tank line is just gonna continue to pop off, and they do repeatedly. The Shock struggled to find answers for this, only really able to get one tick at a time, and it's just less efficient than the other game plan that they had. But due to the map design, you can see why maybe they wanted to try something other than the Zenyatta, since it is difficult to walk Zen into space, which was the other problem on Watchpoint Gibraltar later in the series now. They've learned they gotta keep Violet on Zen, even if the map is rough for it. The problem is, everything we talked about, sculpting the engagement and ignoring the objective, well, when you're on a payload map, you have to send somebody to get progress on the cart, which means you're automatically going to have a team fight disadvantage on the attack that you have to account for and be very careful how you set up and how you aggress, which is why generally in the pro meta, teams put minimal effort into pushing the payload up to this choke, then take a fight onto the high ground. And as everybody knows who's ever played this map, it's tough on the attack to get angles to find a fight where you can meaningfully do anything until you get on blue box or into server or wrap around and flank on the high ground or any number of things other than play from the low ground. That's terrible. But because Soul sends Prophet's Genji to go contest now, Violet isn't really able to play his long-range pickoff battle that he was contributing so much to on the other maps, able to reflect the otherwise lethal volley of Zenyatta orbs, or play above the Transcendence when he gets his Dragon Blade, robbing Violet of the two ways he was carrying every other map. And this works so well that I really wish they put Prophet on the Genji again on Hollywood to try to recreate these types of high-pressure, close-range fights and have a chance of an ultimate that can outplay the Transcendence. It's tough, but with a nano boost going onto your Genji instead of your Roadhog, Genji does have a combo to do enough burst damage through Transcendence to find kills there. Easier still when you damage amp the Genji. So I think if Soul used that bit of game knowledge and applied it to the final map of the series, we may have got a map 7, but it's hard to argue with a team that stomped their way through the rest of the tournament to get there, playing one way, and adapt your focus of who you give your resources on a dime. But in hindsight, I do think that Prophet's Genji may have been the answer for Hollywood. But in conclusion, for Zenyatta's weaknesses, you can see why in ranked, Zen can be a very tricky pick, at least at higher tiers, because players play much more fluidly and take much more risks, going for flanks, going at the backline, and playing a very boom or bust style oftentimes, and that's what Zen's bad at dealing with, and sort of is an auto-lose character if and when they successfully flank him, requiring a village to prop up his playstyle and the entire team to really structure around him to get the angles you want and hold them while you attempt to pop off with ranged firepower. But that's quite a packed breakdown video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and found it useful. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. When a Zenyatta gets picked on your team, are you happy to see it or worried that you'll have to babysit them? If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos go live. Linked in the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for Your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.